move into our top 15 wide receivers. Dobbs, who do you have at 15?
All right, at number 15, we got maybe a little bit controversial, but not if you're a Dolphins fan. We got Jalen Waddle. And again, so like, to explain this, as simple as possible, Jalen Waddle's a guy who produced incredibly well last year despite missing 4 games. Four, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty positive it was 4, though. And missing 4 games. On top of that, still, like I said, very productive stats, but just from a pure play style perspective, Jalen Waddle is incredibly tough to guard. You watch the film, like Jalen Waddle, if it's a one-on-one, like you know what I mean, like good luck staying with Jalen Waddle. It's just the reality is Tyreek is also just Tyreek is Tyreek. When you're playing next to Tyreek, Tyreek's doing the same thing you're doing, except a little bit better. But Jalen Waddle's doing basically what Tyreek's doing. He's just not Tyreek. So Tyreek, of course, is going to dominate the target share. Tyreek's going to be the guy where we look at and we're like, oh my God, the legendary Tyreek with all these yards and all these accolades he has in his career. But make no mistake, Jalen Waddle is incredibly productive. He's very much coming into his own from a play style perspective, from just all the physical tools he has. I was very comfortable slotting him right here at 15. I will admit, I'll tell you right now, it was very much between him and Amari Cooper, kind of tough. But when I slated, yeah, Jalen Waddle's still on the upturn. Amari's kind of starting to peak out, and he's going to be on the downturn soon. I thought when I put it like that, the decision was easy. I had to pick Jalen over Amari.
So I do not have Jalen Waddle on my list. So what I'll do is I'll go 14 on who I have, someone you don't have, and that is Michael Pittman Jr. I think with the added weapons that they have, Adonai Mitchell, and then obviously Josh Downs in his second year, I think it provides Michael Pittman with a little bit less focus on the offense. I do think teams where aware of Downs, but adding a speed threat like Mitchell really forces the issue. And then having a guy like Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, I think Michael Pittman is going to have a even better year than he did last year. And a lot of people don't talk about Michael Pittman because he's not this flashy player, but he was dominant last year, dominant over the middle. 156 targets, 109 catches, 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was averaging 10.5 yards a catch. I just think he is such a good safety blanket for any quarterback, and he is solidifying himself as one of the best receivers in football.
No, you know what? I'm going to say this too. He was right there with Amari. I had Amari just a little above him, but now that I'm thinking about it, it was like, I probably, Pittman is right, again, to your point. Like, I love Pittman. Whenever we talk about the Colts, I always bring up how Pittman's critically underrated, and especially throughout the season last year. I was always like, why is nobody talking about the fact that this guy's going for like 8 receptions a week, 70 yards minimum? He was kind of like last year, he was kind of like a diet prime Michael Thomas. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like he's eating, man. He's eating, just not at the exact same clip that prime Mike was eating, but very similar to role in the offense. And like, yeah, in terms of a matchup standpoint, when you're guarding Michael Pittman one-on-one, you're gonna have yourself a tough day, right? He's gonna box you out. He's gonna use that length against you. He's gonna make day tough for any DB whenever he gets one-on-ones. It was very tough to leave him out of my top 15. Truly, the receivers are probably just the most stacked out position group we've had to cover today. They
Yeah.
actually far and away, far and away. I actually struggled so much with my receivers because so many guys that should be on this top 15 that I felt so bad leaving out. Michael Pittman was one of them. I'm sorry, Mike. You very much could prove me totally wrong. You might really put yourself into that next stratosphere this year, and I very much would regret leaving you out. But for right now, there's just some other guys I have higher expectations for. But to your point, if he makes another leap this year, he certainly will have a spot deserving in this top 15.
Who do you have at 14?
14, I have the diva himself, Stephon Diggs. And again, though, look, let me be clear. Like, especially now that we're talking about it, by the end of this year, if Stephon has a regression and he does it, because again, you could say last year there's questions like, was last year a regression purely on his age and his skill, or was it like him and Josh Allen weren't as close because of many things that have happened over the years? And you have to ask yourself these intangible things like, how close were they still? Like, does that affect how that they played together? All those things, again, because we don't know. We're not in the locker room. We're not in their brain. We don't know. So I don't know if his regression was based off of actually the fact that he's getting older, or it's getting right the fact that things were just weird in Buffalo, and we said from the beginning of the year it just didn't feel right. So I don't know. I'm gonna lean right now that it didn't feel right, right? Like it's like all right, new with CJ Stroud. I could see him going for 13, 1400 again. With that logic, I felt like I would have been wrong to leave him out of the top 15, which is but again getting older. So I slotted him here right at 14, where he's right outside being outside that top 15, but he's right inside that top 15. Like it's tough with Stephon because I really didn't know where to place him. It was kind of Stephon was playing mind games with me like he does with everybody else around him.
I think going into the offense that they have in Houston will help him, especially with Nico Collins and Tank Dell being, weapons, and then having Joe Mixon, Dalton Schultz. So I think we'll definitely see a better season from Stephon Diggs. I still think he's a very good player. I just think his time was kind of up in Buffalo, and it showed on the field a little bit.
Absolutely. That's the thing is it's tough. We're gonna find out though. We're gonna find out this year if it was really, if it was the Bills connection dwindling or if it was Stephon. And there's really no in between. Major questions about Stephon we're gonna have answered this year.
Number 12, Dobbs, or 13, 13.
I was gonna say, don't let me skip my boy right here, even though he is a critical team rival. You know what? He's a legendary player, and I have to give credit where it's due because I'm a purely objective man. You know what I mean? And so at number 13, we got Mike Evans, a guy who's never gone under 1,000 yards in his career. Basically, the model of consistency in the NFL, along with a few other guys at this point. I mean, Mike Evans, just the definition of a true pro, a true Buccaneer legend, and just despite how the quarterback play changes, Mike Evans doesn't change. And that's really the number one testament to Mike Evans, I think you could say, throughout the course of his career. A guy who, when he gets one-on-one, he's probably going to win it if you just toss that thing his way. You have to revolve a lot of red zone game planning around Mike Evans. Mike Evans is just, like I said, there's not really much more to say. Just incredibly consistent, incredibly tough matchup, and he's done it with multiple different quarterbacks, multiple different offensive schemes. It would have been criminal to leave him out of the top 15 is really the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, Mike Evans, I don't know how you can not have him in your top 15 every year. I had him at 12, so not much of a difference. And he had the third most yards in his, or actually, yeah, third most yards, I want to say, in his career with Baker last year, and tied for second most touchdowns. So taking a step, I don't know how you want to put Jameis compared to Baker. Obviously, Baker's had a more successful career, I would say. But like you said, the consistency with Mike Evans has yet to dip, even with his age, and I just don't see it happening this year. So it's kind of hard to leave him off our list.
Yeah, it's just Mike is probably the easiest explanation there is on this list.
100%.
He's never fallen off of the list.
Outside of number one, but
yeah. Exactly. It's just with Mike, he's never moved. Why move him, right?
Yeah. At number 12, who do you got?
So real quick, bro, before we get to number 12, let me just see if I turn this on because the sun now the clouds came out, so it looks all dark.
Oh, yeah.
Does that look better?
So much better, yeah.
Okay, there we go, bro. I was gonna say because I didn't turn it on before because the sun was coming through, but now it'll look a lot better.
Going into number 12, Dobbs, who do you have?
Oh, you're gonna love this one, bro. Number 12, we got, and again, he wouldn't have at the beginning of last year. He truly wouldn't have been on this list, even though he would have been like teetering, right outside. But with what you could argue was the best year of his career, given the amount of games he missed, right? We got Keenan Allen right here at number 12, which is very surprising because I truly did expect that we were going to start getting to the point where Keenan really peaked out. And yeah, he had a good career when he was out there, but I expected it was going to be kind of a steady downturn. He's getting older. Keenan said, hold up. Fuck that, dude. I still got plenty left in the tank. I got no doubt. And it's kind of like we were saying about like CMC and these other guys. Now all of a sudden, I'm not going to doubt you until the wheels fall all the way off. And clearly they haven't fallen all the way off. Clearly, Keenan took WD-40 to the rims of the tires and rejuvenated them. You know what I mean? Like we're all of a sudden where it's like, is Keenan Allen going to, re-enter like a 2-3 year prime here and kind of really be able to gel with this Bears offense, which I know you guys are hoping for. And if that's the case, after how he played last year, I felt like I couldn't move him any lower than number 12.
Yeah, I got him at 15. I think because of the offense that they're going to be in, where it's like Rome, Gerald Everett, Cole Kmet, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, I just think there's a lot of mouths to feed, and I actually think this is beneficial to Keenan because he's not forced to be a wide receiver 1. He could be a wide receiver 2, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. I just think there may be a chance where his stats dip a little bit, but his impact on the field will probably be the same as it was last year. So with that being said, I have him at number 15.
All right, so he just snuck in for you.
Yeah, just snuck in.
He definitely just snuck in the door. That's crazy. But
I
thought you were gonna have him higher. I thought you were gonna have him higher. So that's why
I am trying my best to remove all bias from these. And maybe you might see it with a different guy on the list. But not to spoil anything, Dobbs, who do you have at 11?
Number 11. And I'm gonna be honest about this. I actually feel bad that he made this much of a dip in 1 year. And it really, he might really make this ranking look shitty in a few months. But again, more than anything, I based it primarily off last year. He still is very clearly a top 15 receiver in the league, but a steady dip in production. And he's getting older. Those two things on top of it is why I had him right outside the top 10. We have the legend himself, Devontae Adams. And, like I'm saying, there's really not much more to say. Like, I really wanted to put him in the top 10. He probably does deserve a spot in the top 10, but the guys who I have all in the top 10 have shown not only are they younger, but more productive in more recent time, right? You know what I mean? So that's kind of just the logic more than anything, right? Like Devontae very much, if Devontae has another vintage Devontae year, he's going to throw himself right back in that top 5. And I'm going to be saying to myself, what was I thinking? How can I leave Devontae? How can I push him this far down? But just off last year, like you're saying, the QB situation, it's still very much like, how do we feel about it? The offense as a whole, how do we feel about it? How does Devontae fit into this offense right now? I just felt like with all those questions, I knew he was top 15. I know he still is a legendary player. I had to slot him right outside the top 10 for those reasons.
Yeah, I got him at 9. I mean, I do think obviously he dipped. I think that has a lot to do with the situation. I don't know if it has to do with the talent that he has. And I think being in the AP system with Aiden O'Connell, I guess year 2, obviously AP isn't calling the offensive plays, but I guess my main point is he is in a system for the second year with a quarterback, so he's still getting chemistry, and he still put up 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. So I do still think he is definitely he is one of those guys that we were talking about a little bit with the quarterbacks where it's like he has that killer in him, and that's why I like Devontae Adams so much. So that's why I have him at 9. I just think, until he actually falls off the rails, he's not someone I'm going to question, kind of like King Henry.
Yeah, well, exactly.
All right,
he's definitely earned that. He's definitely earned that tier.
Oh yeah, especially with everything that he's gone through in his career. So, going at number 10, Dobbs, who do you have?
All right, I got another one you're gonna love right here. The Bears fans are gonna love this one. At number 10, just one slot away, or I guess technically 2, but one guy in between them. You get what I'm saying? The Bears receiving new duo over here. We got DJ Moore alongside to go on the same list as Keenan Allen, which is kind of crazy if you're a Bears fan. But it's just crazy in general that the Bears have 2 top 15 receivers in my book now. And then there's a lot of, right, the Bears are going crazy, but that's not the point of today's show. But it's very interesting because you guys have so much talent over there. But yeah, let's get back to DJ Moore. DJ Moore's a guy who, again, has proven he can go over 1,000 yards with multiple different quarterbacks. He can go over 1,000 yards in very, very bad offenses. He's a guy who produces despite circumstance, which is kind of the most important thing in any that, right? For the guys that we see it highest on the list, these are guys that have produced really in any circumstance, right? That's where DJ Moore is at in his career, and he's coming off the best year of his career. And like we said, last year was not too much of a favorable situation for him. The way that offense was running, he still made it work very good for him. He's shown from a route running perspective, from a hands perspective, he's an incredibly tough matchup. And for all those reasons, I would have felt criminal leaving him out the top 10 after what he just did in a very, very unproductive Bears offense last year.
Yeah, so I got him at 8, and I think the reason I have him so high is because I think if Caleb Williams is supposed to be what everyone talks him up to be, this is the best quarterback that he's going to have ever played with, and he's put up numbers with very bad quarterbacks. So if he's the number 1 in this system, and he's playing with the best quarterback that he has in his career, I don't see why he can't be a top 8 receiver in the league and have his best season yet. I think his best season will probably come next year, but basically what I'm saying is potentially the best situation that he's ever been in on an offense. So with that being said, I do have him at 8. All right, so I'm going to do my 11 and 10 because I don't believe that you have them on your list. So at 11, I have Drake London. I think the potential for Zach Robinson and Kirk Cousins to use him in a way that he has not been used before, not that he's going to be used in a different way, but just in a more productive offense. And then you have obviously Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. Like, their offense is poised to have a really good year. And, Darnell Mooney is your 2. Not a bad 2 to have. I think when you ask him to be a 1, it's a little bit of a struggle. But with that being said, I just want to say that I think Drake London is probably in the best situation possible, and we've seen that he can be a very, very good receiver in the league. So very excited to see what Drake London can do this year, and I think 11, right around where Mike Evans is a good spot to have him.
No, don't get me wrong. If it was like purely based off projection, I probably would have found a way to put Drake London in my top 15. Because you remember, that's my wide receiver 1 from 3, I believe now, 3 years ago. It's a guy who I have so much faith in. I had so much stock at the time, and I still do. It was just, the Atlanta war criminal that we won't speak of, that came in and kind of made sure that Drake was never able to eat how he should be eating. He kind of made him starve a little. But, Drake's he's gonna be at the buffet this year. He's gonna be eating good, and I think there will be a huge jump in production at the end of next year. He very well has a big chance to find himself onto my top 15 for the beginning of next year. Yeah, I could see him making a huge jump this year. Just off of last year, I don't want to sneak him in just because, the stats weren't there necessarily. But again, it's because of a certain somebody over there that used to be in Atlanta. But I expect a big jump this year, certainly.
At number 10, I have Garrett Wilson. So he has had 2 1,000-yard seasons, 147 targets in his rookie year, 168 last year. And he's been playing with some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL. Really, really bad offensive coordinators as well. You get Aaron Rodgers back, hopefully, for a full season, and I don't see why he can't go for 1,500 yards. I think Garrett Wilson, obviously, the hype is there, but he's still kind of slept on. I just think, the situation has been so dire there out in New York that the expectations really can't be that high for him. So with that being said, I think this year is probably the best opportunity he's going to have a very, very productive year.
No, yeah. Again, if I based mine more off of like projections than like immediate production last year, Garrett Wilson, another guy I very much would have like had in the top 15. Now I just need to see it with A-Rod. But to your point, I have no doubt he could go for 1250 plus this year. It's just a matter of staying healthy, getting that repertoire with Rodgers. But we know he has the talent. He made that very clear with the college all-22. Now it's just time to tie it all together.
All right, Dobbs, who do you have at 9?
All right, at number 9, I have, and again, Rams fans are not going to be too happy with this one, but don't worry. He's going to work his way up this list as the years go on. It's just, again, off of just a 1-year sample size, I have to apply that at least a little bit, especially with it just is what it is. But Puka Nacua, man, oh man, special talent, absolutely legendary rookie year. And that's just really like a young guy who showed he is incredibly elite at the catch point. He's already a very, very, very good route runner. He boxes guys out. He knows how to use his body. He has everything you need to be an absolutely elite, all-pro type of receiver year in and year out. Now it's just a matter of growing, getting better each year. And he's truly, he has all-pro year in, year out type potential. Now it's just time to see it another year, right? Get a little bigger, get a little stronger, get a little older. He's only going to move up the list as the years go along, as long as he stays healthy. But for right now, there are still 8 guys that I would say that are more talented than Puka Nacua right now, and that's really all it came down to. And if not more talented, just more nuanced and more crafty at the position right now. But like I said, Puka is he's going to keep rising. This is just off 1 year of sample size.
Yeah, I think the connection with him and Stafford is going to grow as kind of age kind of catches up to Cooper Kupp. So I think he is going to be in more of that role. And I think Puka is one of those players, in my opinion, is very smart. So he's going to start picking up a little bit more on the football IQ just on a play-to-play basis. So I think Puka is poised to have another really big year. And I think the Rams got better on offense. So with that being said, I think, I have him at 7. Dobbs, who do you have at 8? I don't have him on my list. But
I'm shocked you don't. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I'm a little hurt you don't have my guy on
Okay,
your list, but
okay.
it's okay. I understand. But because honestly, you know, I even you could truly after last year's tape, you really could argue that he deserves a spot even a little higher than this. But for me, I felt like this was where I was really comfortable having him. But my logic is, look, Nico is a guy who huge jump last year, right? And we've been Nico Collins guys for a little while now. We've been saying the breakouts coming. Last year was finally the year. It was only a matter of time before he found a way to use the route running combo with the size that he had. It was only a matter of time before he became an absolute mismatch terror, which he is now. It's just so like I already just said, the size he has, he is very nuanced. He knows when to sit. He knows when to keep going. He already has a great connection with CJ Stroud. Fantastic at the catch point. A guy who kind of underrated, just underrated route runner, right? Like he's a guy who he has the full toolbox. Not only that, he's going into contract year. He has a lot to prove.
So
I
he
expect even
actually, I
better
was
this
going to
year.
say this. He just got a 3-year extension for 72 mil.
Was this like today?
No, literally like while we were recording like 10 minutes ago.
Okay, that's all right. That's awesome. And it's even better if you're a Texans fan because honestly, he probably could have found like if he has another year like he had last year, he probably could have found a longer term contract for similar money somewhere else. But clearly, he wants to be in Houston. He wants to make it, which is awesome. That's just awesome news if you're a Texans fan. But back to Nico in the immediate, yeah, I mean, just a guy who so not fighting on a contract year, but regardless, absolutely just he made a humongous jump, absolute mismatch. And with that being said, was pretty comfortable having him right here at number 8.
Who do you have at number 7?
Number 7. I think, and this is again, if he wasn't coming off of an injury and we had a full year of him healthy, I do think I'd have him higher on the list. It's just, I just want to see him come back to being at peak where I know he can. With that said, I got Jamar Chase right here at number 7. One of my guys of, one of my guys of all guys, LSU legend. But like I'm saying, I'd love to have him higher, but just off the injury, we know Jamar Chase is incredibly productive. He's what like the route running spectacular. He's great at the catch point. He is Joe Burrow's number 1 target. So if he can stay healthy, he could go for easy 1,500, 1,600, especially once because we know there's a lot of questions about T Higgins right now. What's the situation with T? If T gets traded or whenever next year they don't find a way to get T back on the roster, it's really only a matter of time before Jamar goes for like 1,500 plus because that's just the type of receiver he is. I just want to see him get fully healthy again, get back to that peak player I know he can be. So with all that said, I didn't feel comfortable moving him higher than 7 right now because of the way that my guys that I have at 6 through 1 have been producing over the last year at a more healthy clip.
So I have Jamar at 4. I think he's bound for probably one of the better years. I think it's just at that point where the Bengals are going to be healthy altogether at the right time. We saw it was kind of off last year. And at the end of the day, like he still had 1,200 yards last year, 7 touchdowns, 100 receptions. So I think he can build on that. And I think especially with the fact that we know that T might not be there this year, like maybe not this year, but like Jamar is going to have to end up being a focus of the offense more. So I think that's going to drive him. Obviously, he's going to get a contract extension as well. So this is kind of like a contract year for him. So very excited to see what Jamar can do. And I think he's definitely, when healthy and at the top of his game, a top 5 receiver in the league, no doubt.
No, yeah. And again, I'm with you. I just got to see him get back fully healthy a whole year. He does that. He's going to be in the top 5 next year.
Who do you have at number 6?
Right at number 6, I got AJ Brown. And with AJ Brown, it's just like, man, this guy, you talk about, like we were saying, it's very similar almost to the Nico Collins, right? It's like just absolute just body mismatch. But on top of that, very nuanced, very smart route runner. When you combine those two things together, you get a guy who just, if he gets one on one, you throw it his way. He's 99 out of 100 times. He's snagging that thing down. He's bringing it down, and you're moving the chains. That's AJ Brown in a nutshell, right? But on top of all that, he's also a really, really good deep threat. He is truly the whole package. He's kind of like one of the first guys that we've even gotten to so far that really is the whole package in terms of not only do they have the route running and the catch point and all that, but they have the deep threat ability as well. AJ Brown kind of cracks open that like next. Well, you could say that for Jamar also. I'll say, well, I lied. Jamar is kind of where that tier started, but like that tier of guys where they have everything, and on top of it, they also can burn you down the field. That's
Yeah.
why I think what puts AJ Brown right here into the if we started like the special tier on this list, Jamar's where it started. AJ Brown fits in that same way where he's just a little bit more skilled and polished version at this point of his career as Nico Collins. It's very similar, but just more polished, better, older. And he's been producing 1,400 plus yards 2 years in a row. I mean, how could you sit here and say AJ Brown isn't top six, top five, right?
No, I mean, I have AJ Brown at 5. I think with what he does with the football in his hands, and because he is such a versatile receiver, I mean, he had 106 catches last year, and like you said, 1,400 plus yards the last 2 years, especially in an offense where we saw with the Eagles last year was a little disjointed. And the thing is, because he's so dominant, it allows Devonta Smith to be such a better wide receiver, or I would say opens him up for more opportunities. Devonta Smith is already a very talented receiver. So I think, honestly, having a guy like a Saquon, I know DeAndre Swift had a good year last year, but having a guy like Saquon who's going to make teams be honest to the run a little bit more, I think it's going to even open it up for A.J. Brown. And, A.J. Brown with the ball in his hands is a dominant player. So he's one of the best receivers in the league, no doubt. Who do you have at number 5, Dobbs?
All right, at number 5, I got Brandon Ayuk. And so let me explain, because this is another one where, you know what, I'm already seeing the comments like, how could you put Ayuk over X, X, and X? Look, here's my reason for putting Ayuk at number 5, especially if you're a real tape watcher. Shout out to the real tape watchers out there. Look, Brandon Ayuk is getting open like every play. The reality is this: the Niners are not nowhere near as pass heavy as a lot of these other teams with these other receivers that are on the top 10, top 5. And despite that, he still put up very, very good numbers. He's to the point where truly it's like you like they say the saying, you can't guard this guy in a phone booth. You can't guard Brandon Ayuk in a phone booth. Like Brandon Ayuk you could truly argue at this point in his career, you could make the argument he's the best route runner in the league. Like, and again, that's just purely it's just one skill of the many skills you need to be an elite receiver. But Brandon Ayuk, you're going to be hard pressed to find someone that can consistently stay with him one on one. He's become so nuanced. He's become so smart. He's become on top of it. He knows, again, like I said, right. He knows right when to sit. He knows right when to keep going. He's going to find the open space. He's QB's best friend archetype of receiver. But on top of that, fantastic rack. He also definitely has the deep threat ability. He's really come into a world of his own. It's just he's just not in the most pass heavy offense. You throw Brandon Ayuk on a team that throws the ball 30, 40 times, 50 times a game, Ayuk's going for 1,500 plus. You know what I mean? So I think I equated that heavily into my ranking. And I felt like with all that being said, I would have been a little criminal to leave Ayuk out of my top 5 the way he's kind of really progressed here.
So we have Ayuk and AJ Brown swapped. I mean, it's kind of like once you get into the top 6 of the receivers, it's kind of really, I don't want to say what you prefer, but at the end of the day, like it is, these guys are all so good that it's like, well, what do you value more in a receiver? And I can say very confidently, without Brandon Ayuk on the 49ers, it completely changes the dynamic of that offense, in my opinion, because it's like you have Debo, yes, but Ayuk is just that type of receiver that, like you said, is always going to get open. And if you don't have one of those guys, it really shuts down the pass game quite a bit. So with that being said, Ayuk at 6 makes a lot of sense for me because he has really come into his own over this last year, and you could even argue these last 2 seasons.
No, yeah, I would say this last year was like the start of it. This year was the confirmation. Like, okay, this guy is not only elite, but he's in the special tier range.
Dobbs, who do you have at 4?
Find another guy who went from being in the good range to the special tier range. Another guy who confirmed that he's special this year. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown right here. And my look, let me just address the elephant in the room right off the bat also, right? You know, you could say to yourself if you're if one of these, if AJ Brown's your guy, if Ayuk's your guy, if Chase is your guy, you're saying, well, Amon-Ra's in the slot so much more than these guys. He gets easier matchups, he has an easier time because of that. Well, I'll say to you, look, Amon-Ra doesn't control where he gets placed on the field, right? Like Amon-Ra does with what he has to. He works with what he has to work with, and he's incredibly productive. He's an absolute mismatch for anybody that gets in front of him, especially when he's in that slot role. But you can throw Amon-Ra outside too, and he'll still be productive. He's obviously just most productive in the slot because that's just where he eats most. But the bottom line is, you can move him around. He has a great route tree, incredibly good at the catch point, fantastic after the catch, and he's proven sure-handed. He's of all the guys we have on this list so far, top 3 in terms of just knowing when to sit, knowing when to he's an open space guy. He's quarterback's best friend archetype, like I was saying about Ayuk. And that's why he has so many targets, why he has so many receptions. It's not just because he's playing in the slot. It's because he's playing in the slot incredibly smart, and he knows exactly where he needs to be. And again, but not just, he can still play on the outside. Don't discredit him. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the full package, and he deserves to be in the top 5. So I got him right here at number 4.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I knew I left somebody out, and it was Sun God. So I am just going to slot him in next to Ayuk at number 6.
No, it goes like that, dude. That's how I know exactly how it was because I basically did the exact same thing with Stafford on my list. So I definitely know how it goes.
So who do you have at number 3?
Number 3, we have CD Lamb. And look, I think, it's a weird year where most other years in like NFL history, you look at what CD just did last year and you're like, oh man, CD Lamb's number 1, right? Like it's like this guy is, he's him. He's actually, him and Amon-Ra are very much like, they're kind of just like this. Like they're two guys that like, yeah, they could play on the outside, but they eat way better in the slot. And that's why they play where they play primarily. But it's not like we're going to discredit them for that. They know exactly when to sit. They're fantastic route runners, fantastic hands, fantastic catch radius. He has a catch radius surely that Amon-Ra does not have. I mean, CD Lamb is the full package playing in that slot role, and it's just an incredibly tough matchup. And he showed last year he's a guy making jumps consistently. I mean, when you go over 1,700 yards, you're normally putting yourself in a range, like I said, and most other years, you'd find yourself 1 or 2. There just happen to be 2 receivers in the league right now that are absolute legendary receivers that are on just, Hall of Fame tears. But CD Lamb, make no mistake, very worthy of being top 3. And, he's a guy who can push himself to number 2, even, number 1 potentially over the next few seasons. It's just a matter of how things stack here and how other players stay healthy and progress.
Yeah, I have CD Lamb as well at 3. I think the biggest thing for me is what on that offense last year was scaring you besides CD Lamb and maybe Jake Ferguson. Like Tony Pollard really wasn't that great last year. So I guess my thing is CD Lamb put up 1,700 yards with being like the only dominant weapon on that offense. Like that is the biggest thing to me. And he went from 1,100 to 1,300 to 1,700. He has gotten better every year. He had 135 receptions. It is so hard to cover CD Lamb. I think he is definitely one of the best wide receivers in the league, and he is going to get paid very, very, very shortly. So Dallas definitely has one of the best wide receivers in the league. It's really hard to argue when you have 12 touchdowns and are averaging 13 yards a catch.
Yeah, you can't make an argument with that.
Dobbs, who do you have at number 2?
All right. And I don't think anybody's surprised. Maybe you have him at 1, or maybe some people have him at 1. I'm still, I'm still with my, we'll get to it in a sec. But at number 2, we got Tyreek Hill, legend himself. Again, I feel like you could do 1 or 2 interchangeably depending on how you look at things. But 1 and 2, no matter who you are, if you've been watching ball consistently, you got to have the same 1 and 2, right? And I feel like for me, the difference was it's like Tyreek he's Tyreek, man. Like he's one of the most unique players to ever come into the NFL. He's just, how do you guard Tyreek one-on-one? You don't. I mean, you don't. You have to game plan. You have to revolve your game plan around having 2 guys that are going to bracket Tyreek. And if you give a one-on-one, you better have the biggest cushion in history when the ball is snapped. I mean, it's just Tyreek Hill. How do you quantify the impact he has? The impact he has is that he's one of one, and there's nobody else like him in the entire league. Maybe, maybe now there is on the Kansas City Chiefs, but I don't think he is hitting the same ceiling that Tyreek is hits can be very tough. Tyreek's route tree is full. Tyreek is fantastic with the ball in his hands. He's not just a deep threat. The fact that he is the fantastic deep threat is just the cherry on top of everything else he does so well. Quarterback's best friend, again, knows exactly when to sit, knows exactly when to keep going. He's the full package. He's the full package, despite being the most mini-sized package of receiver. You know what I mean? It's like you just
Yeah.
Tyreek. How do you quantify what he does? He's a special player.
I mean, it's just like, yes, he's getting older, whatever. He had 1,800 yards last year, and until he falls off, similar to Henry or Devontae Adams, like, how do you bet against him? 2 years. He had 1,700 the year before, and he had 13 touchdowns last year. Until I see the dip in the speed, he is the best wide receiver in the league, depending on how you want to rank him. I have him at number 2 as well, so obviously not the best in my eyes. But I think because of what number 1 does, just off the strength of how good he is, not even terms, like, obviously he's very athletic, but, like, you understand what I'm saying. Like, just strength of he is a baller. Tyreek Hill, obviously speed kills in the NFL, and he has taken it to another level. And until I see the dip in the speed and dip in production, he will consistently be a top 3 receiver in the league.
No, you're spot on. Until we see that speed rating go down in Madden, I'm just trolling. Until we see that speed rating going down, yeah, exactly. It's just until we speed, yeah, it's he's him. Tyreek's him.
Number 1, I think it is a pretty easy answer, Dobbs. We both have Justin Jefferson. I mean, it doesn't matter going with Sam Darnold. It doesn't matter if it's JJ McCarthy. It doesn't matter if it's
Doesn't matter if it's the mailman.
if it's the astronaut. Like, like he is just different. And while it has to be amazing to have him on your team, that contract is going to be brutal. Brutal. Which is a good thing. I mean, like, if you have the best player in the league, you're gonna have to pay him. And I mean, you can't. There's pros and cons to it. With that being said, you could throw the ball to Justin Jefferson with 3 guys on him, and he's gonna come down with it. Truly different type of player.
No, it's like from his catch radius. It's not a catch radius. It's a catch net. He's a human net. It's like, yeah, just he's a human, but he basically replicates as a 20-foot long net. Like, just throw it his way. He'll find a way to bring it down. On top of that, the route running is different. He like him and Ayuk he's the one guy that I would say with Ayuk where it's like it doesn't matter who's in front of him. Like, even though he's not as twitchy and as fast per se as Ayuk, he's so much craftier. Even though that Ayuk is so crafty, you know what I mean? It's like, if that makes sense. Like,
No,
he just his nuance for the game is the toppest of notches. He plays the position so smart. He knows exactly where he needs to be. He has the most perfected full route tree of any receiver in the entire league at this point. He's the full package. He's a deep threat. He's a short threat. He's a screen threat. He's everything. He's rack. Justin Jefferson's the full package, which is why he is the unanimous number 1.
Moving into our last position group of the day, Dobbs. It's so funny. I was like,